All right, I believe we are live.
Okay.
Yeah, welcome everybody. Very happy to be here today. It's early 6 a.m. here on the East Coast of New York, and Professor Chandra is in the UK. It's a pleasure to be here with her. Professor Chandra Wickramasinghe is a doctor, a professor, an astronomer, an astrobiologist, a mathematician. His groundbreaking work alongside the late Sir Fred Hoyle has been making shock waves throughout astronomy ever since the 1970s. And it's always an intriguing conversation when we get to talk about the cosmos with a longtime friend of the show, Dr. Professor Chandra Wickramasinghe. Very pleasure to have you here today, my friend. Thank you for coming back on the Space Water podcast.
Yeah, nice to be back with you. And Space Water Project reminds me of a very ancient poem, old poem by Coleridge. It was a poem called Ancient Mariner, and there are the two lines that remind me of this story is water, water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. Right? In the universe, seems to be water everywhere. Every single place that we've looked at, there is either water ice or a part of the water molecule called the OH radical. That's everywhere in the universe. So, I mean, that's been more or less accepted by astronomers from the 1960s onwards. But to connect it with life has been much more difficult intellectually and sort of politically because they regard water as being okay, but life is a no-no. And this is really quite an astounding position that I had to grapple with over my entire career. And I find it very strange. I also find it very strange that all the way from the 1960s onwards, astronomers, radio astronomers didn't think twice about the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, right? They deployed the precious resources of radio astronomy, radio telescopes to try to look for signals from intelligent life elsewhere in the universe. But when it came to primitive life, there was a totally different. It was a totally different ballgame. They didn't want to look at the evidence for primitive life right from the very beginning. So I think this is a contradiction. I think this is it's ironical in one sense, and it's really it's an indication of the collective stupidity of an organization like Astronomers United,
Yeah.
Astronomers PLC.
And you, as a mathematician as well, I mean, I guess it would be sort of mathematically improbable for there to be just life on Earth, right?
Well, I think it's utterly, totally impossible, improbable. I mean, I think we've talked a lot about the probability of life starting in the first instance, right? The standard story that we have been taught from our textbooks and our very earliest biology textbook is that life arose spontaneously from non-living matter, from an inorganic soup on the earth, a mixture of simple chemicals got together and made life. And this, when you examine it deeply, in terms of what we know about life and what we know about chemistry, it's so utterly stupid. It's utterly incredible that this process could have worked. And we have used many metaphors to show that it's or to argue that it's so stupid. For example, we in one piece of writing, I think Fred and I wrote that it is more probable that a tornado blowing through a junkyard would assemble a fully working Boeing 747 than life starting from a
Yeah.
primordial soup. So, I mean, that's the kind of improbability that has to be coped with. And right up to this day, experiments are being done and have been done in the most sophisticated chemical biological laboratories, and not a single piece of evidence supports the primordial soup story, the spontaneous generation soup story. On the other hand, the ideas that we have been promoting for a long time and discussing for a long time is that bacteria, life, primitive life, is very easily transferred from one cosmic location to another. It's very easily transferred from one location on the Earth to another, right? We have genes, horizontal gene transfer is a well attested process where genetic material is exchanged
The
between
bacteriophage. Yeah.
yeah, widely different species are involved in this. So there's not it's not a big ask to say that the same process must happen on a cosmic scale.
Yeah.
And this was the sort of rationale for all of the work that we've done from the 1980s onwards. But as I said, I mean, the acceptance of intelligent life as a possibility and a total rejection of primitive life is a contradiction that has to be addressed. I mean, these guys are mad if they think that intelligent life could exist everywhere in the universe, search for it, spend a lot of money, and then ignore every bit of data that tells you that there is a lot of primitive life. So that's the story. But I
Yeah.
mean, I think Rao, you wanted to concentrate on the latest re-examination, isn't it, of the Voyager data from 1984, right?
Yes, yeah. I wanted before we get into that, did you want to go over that little article thing that you sent me? I think it was
Well,
about
all that I said there is that it's nearly 50 years, 14, is it 49 years since my friend Gil Levin and Patricia Stroud made this really important discovery that it's called the Viking mission to Mars, and there was a lander. The first time there was a land on the surface of Mars, and they had an experiment that they devised to put to dig into the soil, sort of maybe centimeters into the soil, and pour a radioactive labeled nutrient onto the soil and to see if that nutrient was taken up by any bacteria that might have been there. And what they found was that the whole thing sort of frothed up. It was a amazing, gratifying positive for Gil and Patricia Stratt. And they immediately made the announcement, even before they had the sort of approval from their bosses in NASA. It reached even, I think the president of the US said this is the most important discovery and so on. But NASA thought otherwise and very quickly recanted. They said the establishment view was, hold on, there may be other ways in which we can explain this data. It's not necessarily life. There may be a chemical that was involved, a chemical on the soil, a
come on.
superoxidant that was talked about, and so on. So all of this was thrown as a sort of dampener for the positive result that emerged from the Levin-Stratt labeled release experiment. And now it's nearly 50 years, 49 years since so this experiment was done. And a couple of years ago, unfortunately, my friend Gil Levin died at the age of about 100. And so he didn't witness the final sort of proper appraisal of the Viking data. But I think the Viking 1975 data is a crushing victory for discovering life on another planet. I think it was a positive discovery, and that remains so, even though uh, the sort of widespread approval by the authorities has been lacking.
Yeah,
Now,
and this
against that backdrop, Ra,
yeah.
the recent hype over the moons of Uranus is very interesting because again, in a long time ago, in 1984, I think it was about 40 years ago, there was a Voyager spacecraft, Voyager 2, NASA Voyager 2 spacecraft that flew past Uranus and many other planets as well. But it took a close look at Uranus with its many planets. Uranus is a very interesting system. It has something like, I don't know, maybe well over 10 moons, 13, I think, moons in the inner regions of the planetary system, Uranus system. And they reckon the argument then was that this was a huge in the midst of a huge solar storm that was taking place. The whole of that planetary system, Uranus and its moons, were enveloped in ionized gas, in plasma, and so on. And so it was thought to be completely uninhabitable. But it was not known at the time, it was not appreciated at the time that this was what is called a transient solar event. Okay, the sun is active at times, very active at times, and at times then it can envelop a planetary system like like Uranus and its moons. And that's what was happening in 1984. And so what these guys, astronomers, have done recently, this few weeks ago, months ago, was to take a fresh look at that data from 1984 and say that if there was no solar storm of that magnitude, the sun was not active, then many of the moons of Europa, several of the moons of Europa, may indeed be habitable. They may indeed have oceans, frozen oceans. Underneath the frozen oceans, there could be microbial life. There could be habitable
Wow.
zones for microbial life.
It's
So
right
that's,
under Arthur C. Clarke's category there.
what's that?
Right under Arthur C. Clarke's stories with
Yeah,
frozen
Arthur C.
frozen.
Clarke had a story that the
Yeah.
moons of not of Europa, he was talking about the moon, one of
Jupiter,
the
maybe. Right?
moon of Jupiter
Yeah.
called, isn't it? And Europa, and this moon uh, has been studied by spacecraft for a long time. It has a frozen crust with an orange tint and sort of dark orange cracks all over the place. Uh, Lots of evidence for organics molecules oozing out of those cracks. So Arthur C. Clarke had this story that there may be intelligent dolphins swimming under the ice crust of Europe. I mean, I think that's very far-fetched. I don't think there's anything like that. But habitability of microbial life, yes, certainly. I think all these moons with icy crusts have the potential to be habitable and to be inhabited by a variety of microbial species. I think even the moon, I mean, the moon has recently been visited by an Indian spacecraft, which was the first spacecraft to
Yeah.
actually land on the south pole of the moon not so long ago, some months ago. And if they can dig deep into that ice, I bet they will find microbial life. After all, the moon and the earth are very close to each other. If there's life on Earth, microbial life on Earth, there surely have to be exchanges between the Earth and the moon. And so the moon, wherever there is water, underneath these polar ice crusts, I bet they would find microbial life.
Yeah, I bet too. And you said even in that experiment, they might have even killed the microbial life, right?
Well, that's a possibility that
Yeah.
my friend Dirk Max Schulz has voiced recently. I don't personally believe that to be the case. I think what he says is that the negative for life on Mars that has been declared on the basis of analyzing the Viking data could be explained in terms of the killing or the
Huh.
wholesale killing of microbes that might have been sensitive to water, to excess of water. So this is a possibility, of course. But I think the labeled release experiment that Levin and Strout conducted was decisive, and I would stand by his original claim that there was positive life detected at the Viking landing site. And then I think I mean, the critics at that time said maybe there's a chemical process, maybe there's a superoxidant, what they call a superoxidant, and that could have been the cause of the chemistry that led to the a false result. So all of these were being discussed, and since 1980, 85, of course, 84, there have been many other probes of Mars, various other types of investigations of Mars, including a surveillance of the atmosphere of Mars over many seasons. And I think this was the European spacecraft that did that. And they found that in the summertime, there was an excess of methane in the Martian atmosphere. Now, that is easily explained in terms of biology. In the summer, there will be microbial activity will be taking place with great vigor, and so there will be a lot of methane expected to be thrown into the Earth's upper atmosphere. I'm not saying that this is the case, but the data that was obtained since the Viking experiment they all go in positive direction in supporting Gil Levin's claim that he made right from the beginning. And he made it and he maintained it to his dying day. And he died, as I said, at the age of about 100, not so many
He
months
was
ago.
holding out. He was trying to hold out.
Yeah, he was trying to hold out, but it didn't work out for him, unfortunately. I think the establishment was so stubborn, and they didn't want to give him the light of day.
It's unfortunate. It's really horrible how science becomes dogmatic. Well, starting in the late 1970s, my whole time period, I was born in 78. So the Voyagers have been going for my whole life, starting
Yeah,
in the late 70s. I think it was 1977.
yes.
They're based, I think one scientist, I think, put it, they're the gift that keeps on giving, right?
Yeah.
So what is it until their plutonium runs out that they're gonna still be giving us information and
Well, I think they're still continuing their investigations. The Voyagers are still doing their job in various ways, and I think one or two of the Voyagers have left the solar system, isn't it? I believe they have left the solar
yeah,
system
interstellar space is where
into
they had the
space.
problem.
Yeah, yeah. Whether they will be able to communicate the results back to Earth is another matter, but I mean, that was a major achievement for space exploration of the solar system. I would personally congratulate NASA for for that, and I think the whole of their budget is worth the effort and the energy they put into the Voyager's spacecraft. It was great, and the 1984 Voyager, 1985 Voyager uh, spacecraft, in the case of examining the environment of Uranus, has now come to the fore and it's been making headlines. I think it's not a big deal. What they're claiming is obvious. They're finding habitable or habitats everywhere in the solar system. I mean, that's obvious to us. Every single comet seems to have watery interiors. There's evidence for water in asteroids, in carbonaceous asteroids. There have been they're all part of, there have been fragments of large objects that had huge oceans, subsurface oceans. And there's bound to have been life. I mean, there's no question that the argument that we made in the 1980s for life being everywhere in the universe has to be 100% correct.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting with the Voyager because as they moved into interstellar space and went beyond the heliosphere, and for people out there that are listening, this is I think the first man-made object ever to go beyond the heliosphere, which is a bubble of solar wind
Yeah.
around our whole solar system. They discovered that the plasma density was significantly increasing once you move beyond the heliosphere,
Mm, mm.
right?
Yeah,
So that's very interesting.
yeah.
And I think they detected before there was just short bursts. Now they detected a low hum within
Mm,
the plasma waves.
mm,
So is this possibly, I know I'm going a little off the chain here, but is this
mm.
possibly this radio emissions that's in the plasma waves, could this be the voice of God, so to say, the voice of the universe,
Yeah, I mean
right?
that's a romantic view to take, but I think
Yeah.
I think you can't rule out anything. But I think they're it's purely physical effects. That's my personal view, and it's in that context that life would survive and life would take root wherever the conditions are appropriate. There would be life, and I think if there's primitive life, there's also going to be uh, naturally there's going to be complex life.
Yeah,
What
advanced
comes
life.
from life?
And it seems that structures seem to form within the plasma as
Yeah, yeah,
well, right? So,
yeah. I mean, I think my colleague Robert Temple is very keen on plasma sort of host being the
yeah, I was in correspondence with him about it.
okay,
Yeah,
okay,
you connected us. Yeah,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I've not been into it in a very deep way, but I think he's got something going for him there, which I haven't fully understood. But life is everywhere. There's no question about it. Whether it's in plasma or in neutral gas, I don't care. I think life is part of the universe, an integral part of the universe. It is everywhere. In every possible niche, there is life, and where there's a complex niche like on the Earth, then and this life has been had access over a long period of time, then evolution into creatures like you and me would be a natural outcome. So I think the 1960s search for extraterrestrial intelligence is well worth continuing, and that's my personal point of view.
Well, what do you think's going on with the radio emissions, the low hum in the interstellar plasma? Do you think
Well,
it's
I think
just
I think that
noise?
is a purely physical effect. I don't think that there's any intelligence that is necessary for explaining that. But having said that, I mean, I think there are so many different ways in which an intelligence, maybe many powers of 10 greater than ours, could try to announce that they're there.
Yeah.
It's not going to be just radio signals saying, "Hi,
Yeah.
how is Jack there?" Or John.
Could it be that it's sending information to form new stars, to form superclusters? Like we have the Laniakea supercluster, we have this Hercules Corona Borealis Great Wall, these huge superclusters. Even
Yeah,
the
well,
Sagittarius.
it could be the information for all of that could certainly be encapsulated in bacterial genomes. The bacterial genomes are very complex informational
Yeah.
repositories, and I could imagine anything to be written into them. And
Wow.
there is a method of transmitting information through bacteria. I think that was something that we should really be apart from SETI, radio
100%.
signal, we should look at the bacterial flora on the Earth because we know that there are bacteria all over the surface of the Earth and they're coming in all the time. And that also is almost certain that there's a flood of bacteria coming into the Earth. So if there's extremely intelligent guys out there, they would use the bacteria as space, as sort of information. There's a lot of redundant DNA in bacteria and in living cells, which you
Yeah.
don't understand at all. Could that redundant DNA be coding very complex signals, complex messages? I think that is a very, very striking and important possibility that has been ignored.
That's the gene of ISIS, maybe the gene,
Mm. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's incredible. That's really incredible. So these even asteroids, they seem to be holding the building blocks of life. And have you noticed that there's symbols? Let me see if I can share this with you. Hold on, let me pull it up for a second. Let me get it before we go today. I know I said we went a little bit longer than I said we were gonna go, but um me see if I have them in my email. Let me just pull them up. These are symbols that seem to be on the asteroid. It doesn't seem like just random markings,
Mm, mm,
Professor. I'll show you. All the near Earth objects I
mm,
checked out, they have like these concentric circles
mm,
that are interlapping with each other, and they're some of them are even one of them became our little moon of ours for a little while.
mm, mm.
Um, Here, let me show you. Let me pull up the share screen. I'm interested in your comments on this. So this is Donald Johansson,
Mm.
Donald Joe Johansson. You see these markings here,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
They, they,
Now,
they look intelligent.
and then look, this is also Donald Johansson, the same one.
Uh,
And then we'll go to now you're a mathematician. The probability of two asteroids, two near Earth objects having these identical markings on them would be astronomical. So here's
would be,
another asteroid. This one is um 2024 PT5, the one that was our mini moon, the same
mm.
exact markings. And then here's
Yeah,
another
yeah.
one, 2024 PT5 right here. And then here's Donald Johansson.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
then
but I don't know. I mean, I think there could be anything. It could be. Physics leads to the same result if they have the same conditions to that. I mean, for example, an impact of a very spherical object with this asteroid might produce a circular, rimmed crater of this kind. I don't know. I mean, I think anything is possible. I think there's no question that you have to keep an open mind.
could the
But
sun, like a plasma lightning blast?
yeah, something like that. I think it could be, but that could be, that's a physical effect, isn't it? It's not an
Yeah, well,
intelligent.
maybe the sun is encoding these asteroids with specific symbols that are broadcasting a frequency or a message.
Well, I don't know. I would rather prefer to believe that I mean,
Maybe,
crystal, for instance, the structures of crystals are uniformly, I mean, perfectly geometric, isn't it?
yeah,
And like a macroscopic crystal structure. So it could be that it could be inorganic, but I think anything is possible.
yeah. It's and like I mean they're putting in position at specific times. Like one just became our mini moon, and they're holding
Hmm.
the building blocks of life.
Yeah.
Maybe they could be broadcasting those bacterial codes.
Yeah, well, it could be. I mean, it could be anything, but they're amazing. They're beautiful,
Yeah.
beautifully regular geometrical forms, aren't they?
Yeah, very interesting. I also found it interesting that like I guess meteorites become meteorites when they come to Earth, but they're never found in in space really.
No, no.
So where are they they're breaking off of comets or
Yeah, they're breaking off. Meteorites are just breaking off of larger, of extinct, burnt out comets. I mean, extinct comets tend to be, if the comet is all made of water, then everything disappears. But if there's a rocky component in the comet, then that rocky component accumulates when all the volatiles are evaporated, and you get a lump of very porous, rocky material. And that's like the stuff that we had in Bennu and Rigu, the two asteroids that were looked at recently
yeah.
by the Japanese.
Yeah, I mean it would be really great if we can actually track where the bacteria is coming instead of the radio emissions. Maybe we can somehow
Yeah, well, I think that the way to do that is to look at to examine the Earth much more closely than we have been doing, and to look at the upper atmosphere. For example, the fact remains that there is a discovery that was made not so long ago, maybe less than 10 years ago, by the Russian astronauts their on their spacecraft, right, the orbiting spacecraft, and these are still unanswered. Well, how can very complex life forms appear on the windows of the International Space Station,
yeah.
which was orbiting at a distance of some, I don't know, 300 or 400 miles above the Earth? So there's no chance that it was lifted from the Earth. So it's stuff that is just flying out for comets and asteroids and meteorites, and just slamming occasionally on the windows of the International Space Station. And this is,
Like flies on a windshield, right?
yeah, that's right.
Very, very interesting. All right, before we close, just one more thing about Voyager. Voyager is about 15 billion miles from Earth right now in
Yeah.
interstellar space, and for a certain amount of time, it was communicating gibberish, and then for like 5 months, and then all of a sudden in April of 2024, I think it was like November or something of
Mm,
2023, and then in April
mm,
2024, it just started communicating again
mm.
out of
No,
nowhere.
I haven't looked at it. I've seen comments like that in the literature, but
Yeah.
I haven't looked at them. I think the spacecraft Voyagers are still active, even if they've left the solar system. They're doing their job. How they are communicating their findings back to the Earth is another matter. I don't know whether the signals are being garbled or what.
Yeah, I think they were
I
in
just don't
ones and
know.
zeros, and then all of a sudden the ones and zeros didn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe next time we come on, we can go over some of your findings if you found out more about the Voyager and some
Yeah.
of your new findings.
Okay. No,
You
I
really
haven't
blew
looked
my
into the
mind today
Voyager.
with the bacteria. Really blew my mind because that's a lot of the stuff that I've been working on. One of the things that I had a revelation about was the very Ankh of Egypt, the
Hmm.
the Pasha of Hindu is the
Hmm.
coronal mass ejection loop.
Okay.
That coronal loop.
Hmm.
Yeah. So and they're holding it. Hey, look at one of these. This is Akhenaten from the later
Yeah.
18th. You literally have the Ankh, the loop, being handed down
Oh,
by the arms of the sun.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah, the Egyptians and the ancients had it all. They knew it all. The ancient Indians, the ancient Egyptians,
Yeah.
they were much less biased in a different direction. And the European scientists have been struggling to accept that there is extraterrestrial life.
Yeah.
They like to think that life is confined to the earth, that they are the most important beings in the whole cosmos. And this is the problem, I think. I think we are, even politically, we think that each individual nation is the most important.
My
And
ancestor Giordano was put to death for it.
yeah, he was put to death for it.
Put to death for it. Yeah. I mean, I really think it's really important for us to understand. I mean, the Vedas, they call that loop the Pasha that in Hindu.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's
right.
it's described literally as a golden noose that comes from the sun.
Yeah. The truth has to always prevail. And
Yeah.
if you're going to twist your facts to suit a kind of geocentric or human-centric worldview, I think that's marks the end of civilization. And I think that's what we're seeing now. I think
Oh
we
yeah.
are in dire straits at the moment as a civilized human
I agree.
population. I think we are really on the edge, on the verge of destruction, self-destruction.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe our vibration is and what comes out of us is sort of what is put back down on us from the stars, from the sun. Maybe they're absorbing our vibration and evolving us accordingly.
Yeah, well, you're putting it in a poetic
Yeah,
form.
yeah. In very poetic form. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here, Professor Chandra. Dr. Professor Chandra Wickramasinghe, everybody, a crusader for the truth in the world and the cosmos. Thank you for having
Thank you.
thank you for coming on and thank you for spending this time with me. It's really a pleasure.
Thank you.
Everybody, Space Water Podcast, sponsored by the Mystical Spiral Store. Professor Chandra Wickramasinghe, episode 34. Thank you and spiral out.